Good evening. There we are. I think. Not sure why that is. Not sure why that is mirrored. All right. This is Jeff with Astro Scoop, Deep Dive Astrology Coaching. It is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is my weekly live stream here on YouTube at AstroScoop3801. And I'm also on X, Astro_Scoop, and Instagram, AstroScoop7. So you can follow me on those socials. And I post on those almost daily. And like I said, the weekly live streams here, usually at 8 p.m. Fridays. Right now it's 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I don't see anybody. I hope the stream is working because I don't see anybody and this seems odd. All right, let me see here. Hopefully that's better. Just playing with the tweaking the settings here. Looks a little, I don't know how it looks on your end. It looks a little washed out. Looks a little washed out on my end, sort of thing. But that should do. And how's everyone doing? It's May 23rd, 2025. So today is the second to last Friday in May. And if you caught my live stream last week, we talked about the Taurus Gemini cusp, and Gemini started 3 days ago. So happy Gemini season. Happy birthday to all Gemini people in the next month from May 20th or 21st to the third week in June. And tonight we're going to talk about just pure Gemini, raw Gemini energy. We're going to wait a few minutes, see if anyone comes in since I picked a different time. And it's possible people might have come at 8 and saw that I wasn't there. So we'll see if people stop by. But if you checked out my live stream from last week, if you haven't, please check it out. I talk about Taurus and Gemini together as a cusp, the two signs, and then how that leads into the week coming up, which is May 25th to right around June 2nd or June 3rd, which is the Gemini 1 period, which is all Gemini. So tonight, which is the 23rd, we're still technically on the cusp, but we are in Gemini. So if you're born, if you're born yesterday, you're born the 21st, 22nd, or today, you are an early Gemini, very early. And you would still have some small smidgen of Taurus traits. So you might be a flexible identity. Your identity might be a flexible Gemini with a little bit of hint of earthiness and more caution or more stubbornness, possibly. And that would go through tomorrow as well, the 24th. If you're born on Sunday, the 25th, or Monday, the 26th, Memorial Day, you are early Gemini, but you're a little farther along, and now you're no longer on the cusp. So Gemini's born next week that we're going to talk about tonight don't have a Taurus influence. And they don't have a Taurus influence. We're dealing with air sign now. Gemini is the first air sign of the zodiac and the first mutable sign. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, third sign. So it's all about air now. So we're going to start in the cosmic sky. We're going to start seeing less. We're going to start seeing less of the Earth energies, except for the moon. Like last week when we did the live stream, the moon was in Capricorn. Tonight the moon is in Aries. But with Gemini, it's all air, and which is quite different. So coming off the heaviness of Taurus and the kind of the thickness of spring and the dense thickness of the greenery coming in, and the grass growing thicker, and that sort of happenings with Gemini. Now we're getting into very late spring. Now we're in the last sign before summer starts. So we're in the last little leg of spring before the solstice with Cancer, which is water. And I've been watching some Gemini shorts and reels, getting other astrologers' perspectives on Gemini to try to keep mine fresh. And I looked at my live stream from last year, when one live stream where I mentioned Gemini, just to see what I talked about. So hopefully I won't repeat myself completely. But you can also check that out too. Look about a year ago where I talk about Gemini, and I also have the Gemini Taurus cusp there as well. All right, so let's just wait a moment. Okay. It says there's one person in here. Okay. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. Anyways, if anybody wants to comment at some point, just let me know how this lighting looks, because I'm experimenting with different lighting in here, and now it's the sunset was about 20 minutes ago, so it's dark now, and but this on my end, it's looking a little bit washed out. Not terrible. It's fairly clear after I tweaked it, but just let me know if it looks a little odd. I know I did a video earlier today on Instagram. I did a very short live Instagram, and for some reason it came out very blurry. So I apologize for that. Not sure why, but quite blurry and not clear at all. So it might have been the connection possibly. All right. So I'm still getting used to this new software here, and it's kind of tricky. Check comments on stage. All right, so last week we talked about Taurus Gemini. This week, like I said, May 25th to June 2nd is Gemini 1. So if you know anybody born, actually next week, they are true Gemini people. And, you know, Gemini is, I always like to talk about the essence of each sign and how it uniquely differs from all the other 11 signs. Because, all right, there's some good evening. Good evening. All right. Good evening. I always like to talk about each sign and how it differs greatly from every other sign, because every sign is truly unique. And I saw a video today of a male astrologer, that talked about how every sign has a high potential, like a high vibration and a low vibration, which I thought was really well done. And every sign does have that. I always talk about that. If you look at my really old videos when I first started, I always talk about vibration, what vibration you're on, maturity, evolvement. We're always maturing. We're always evolving. We're going to have bad days where we're going to be a little selfish or a little immature, or we're just not going to be our best selves, but that's okay. Hopefully more days than others, we're closer to our best self. So that's what you have to shoot for. It's not so much, oh, I had a bad day. It's how many days can I be positive naturally, no matter what I'm dealing with in life. to be positive naturally, to balance out, that one or two, bad days or misfires sort of thing. So when we talk about Gemini, just a quick reminder, the YouTube, if anyone that comes in late, the YouTube live streams are here Fridays at 8. Tonight it's 8:30, but it's Eastern time. So just make a note of that, Eastern time, and sign in to your Google or YouTube account and subscribe. Click all are personalized. Please subscribe. I still have 70% of my viewers, 70 to 75% that do not subscribe and aren't subscribed. So I continue to get views, especially on old videos, but people aren't subscribed. So please, if you see this, please subscribe and tell your family and friends to subscribe. I don't have that many notifications. You will not get bombarded like 3 or 4 times a week like some people, some channels have. So I really don't post that much. But anyways, the sun in Gemini, Gemini 1, which is Mercury times 2. And I talk about this every year. This is really what helps Gemini to stand out from the crowd with all the other signs. So sun in Gemini. This also goes to even if you have major Gemini in your chart, but you aren't a sun in Gemini, or you have a Gemini rising, stellium, even Moon, Venus, Mars rising. That's all major Gemini in the chart. And I have some family members that have major Gemini in the chart. I do not. I don't have any planets in Gemini at all. And I assume I probably did in a past life. And I'm chatty enough. I can chat. So I don't need planets in Gemini. I can chat enough, but I can also be quiet as well. And that's something, remember that point, that's something we're going to circle back to towards the end, is quiet kind of thing. Quiet for Gemini. So Gemini 1s, May 25th to June 2nd, all Mercury. So this is early, raw air sign energy. This is the first burst of fresh air for the zodiac. After the fire of Aries, the heavy earth of Taurus, and sometimes overly heavy plodding nature of Taurus, is you have this breath of fresh air that is Gemini. And whether that's positive or negative depends on the situation, I think. Very much. Gemini is the sign that's most related to its environment. Gemini is so influenced by its immediate environment, meaning, the sounds, sensory, the company they're with, friends, family. You will see Gemini people, you will see strikingly different sides of Gemini depending on who they're with. This also goes for Moon and Rising people, and to some extent Gemini Rising. Moon and Gemini. But this is very, very much a thing with pure Mercury Gemini people. Is Mercury was the messenger of the gods, and Gemini's the twins, obviously. And Gemini really, with all the Mercury, represents just duality. So in any form, yin and yang, or yin and yang, black and white, day and night, the concepts. Like Pisces is more emotionally, like day and night, kind of opposites. But conceptually, that's Gemini, is all duality. So, Geminis often get this bad reputation as being two-faced, or, whatever words people use, fake, unreliable, and flaky. And a lot of that depends on the maturity of the individual. If you yourself have Gemini in your chart, major Gemini, especially if it's in your big 3, Sun, Moon, or Rising, if you have major Gemini like that, you'll know that when you were young, or if you are young, and by young I mean probably from like 4 or 5 to probably your late 20s, at least up to Saturn return, you'll know that there was an infusion of energy in you, unless you were sick or something. But if you were generally in good health, the infusion of having major Gemini in one of your big planets there just gave you a thrust of, mental and active energy to be on the move. It's just, that's Mercury. It's messages, traveling. Gemini is local travel. Gemini is all about more of the short trips. That's also the third house, short trips. But Gemini ones are all Mercury, and you'll know if you have it that it's hard to stop that. I always talk about the signs and pace. How every sign has a pace. A lot of it has to do with your Mars sign. When you get your birth chart done, which I can do, or a reading, the astrologer will often mention your Mars sign, which is your energy, how you use your energy, in addition to your sun. The Gemini sun person, their identity and life force is that of a Gemini. But if they have Mars in a different sign, just any other sign like Cancer or something, they will use their energy differently in concert with the Gemini sun. And it may be compatible or not. It may cause friction that makes an aspect, or it might create more flow. But Gemini 1 people, this is from 5 to 8 degrees, is a group of stars called Hyadum 1, 2, and 3. And it equates, some of the texts say equates to Mars and Saturn. So Mars-Saturn energy in addition to the Mercury. So one way I look at this early Gemini energy, which I don't think I mentioned last year or the year before. So my new fresh take on the early Gemini energy is, when we look at all the signs in terms of a life cycle of 80 to 90 years, let's say, if someone lives that long, Gemini now coming off of Taurus, Gemini isn't a baby or an infant or even a big kid. Now Gemini is at a point, the nature of Gemini is at a point where a preteen kid comes into their own as a teenager, kind of. That's how I relate it. And then so a teenager at 14 or 15 is going to start to take more risks and be more daring and want more freedom, or understands that they need more freedom than an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 12-year-old. So they're kind of getting out of that, which would be more like the sign before it, Taurus, or earlier. So if we think of Aries as the baby or the infant, so now with Gemini, there's this whole new burst of energy to kind of get on the scene. And that's like, just to break it down like on a street level, like keep it simple, stupid. Everybody knows that people that have major Gemini, whatever planet it is, I see this time and time again. I've known many Gemini people. I've also known a lot of Gemini risings, a lot of Mars in Gemini, and I've known an unusually amount of Gemini moons, which I feel like I'm an expert on, because I've dated Gemini moons. I've been friends with Gemini moons. I've been acquainted and worked with Gemini moons. I don't know why I happen to know so many Gemini moons. Maybe there happens to be, on certain years, there's just very predominant at certain times. But so for this early Gemini energy, it's something like, and this goes along with the star here, it's like this, it's like the evolvement of any sign. You have your angel sign or your devil. You have your angel side or your devil side. So it's like on one shoulder, Gemini can be really a breath of fresh air and want to know everything about want to know everything about everybody and everything about the world, and helpful, and has all these, fresh, effervescent, bubbly ideas on how to change things and make things fresh, make things fun, and get out of the heaviness of Taurus. And then on the other hand, on the other shoulder, it's like Gemini may do that in a way that's so forceful, or abrasive. So early Gemini energy that's all Mercury can be abrasive. And it really depends on the involvement and maturity of the person. But there's a need to, there's a need to throw irons in the fire. You got a fire burning, and you're just, I don't think I've ever known any chart that I've done a reading for, or known someone that had major Gemini that did not have multiple things going on in their life at once. Now, we all have multiple things. I'm not saying it's only Gemini. We all have jobs, family, friends. We might go to the gym. We might have a hobby. I have multiple things. That's not what I mean. What I mean by having multiple things in your life is the Gemini energy goes out of their way to be a step ahead of themselves. Okay, does that make any sense? So not only is Gemini maybe a step ahead of you in their thinking, they're a step ahead of themselves. And if you're a major Gemini person, you'll know what I mean. So in your mind, you know where you are, and you know what you're doing. And you're thinking, okay, what's next and what's fun? What's enlightening? What's knowledgeable? Or what's fun? Which path am I going to go down tonight? Or who am I going to date? Am I going to date someone enlightening? Am I going to date someone just fun? Am I going to date someone that is a writer? Ooh, can I pick their brain? That's where Gemini's always at. So the danger in that lies in the chasing. Gemini's always moving and chasing something. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we all need to keep dynamic. We don't want to be too static and stay in the same position. We want to learn new things. We want to meet new people, maybe try new hobbies or interests, whether it's at work or a side hustle or whatever. I'm constantly learning things on the computer about the streaming and things, and I've used some of these things for several years, and I'm still learning, and some of it I'm not even that great at. I can do it, even my videos and editing and things. I can do things. I have skills, but it takes me a long time to get to another level. So I'm always trying to learn. I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to keep myself fresh, even though I don't have any Gemini planets in my chart or Gemini rising. But I can't imagine how that feels, because I don't know how that feels. But I see that Gemini need in people. I've traveled with Geminis or Gemini moons, and I know I've said this before. It's like my senses with the Gemini is the Gemini planet goes, psst, hey, and you go, what we're having fun here, and the Gemini's like, wait, psst, what's around that corner? Right around that corner. Look, can I just peek? So not peeking is killing the Gemini. Even though you probably know there's nothing that exciting around the corner. It might be an alley with a cat in it. But Gemini doesn't know that. Even if all the evidence shows that it's a rainy night and it's not there. But Gemini is like, but I'm traveling. What's around that corner? So Gemini might have to look, and then they go, oh yeah. Nope, not very stimulating. What's around that corner? So now that doesn't mean every Gemini is manic like that, but the essence of early Gemini energy is always, Gemini is, I think, there's many signs in the zodiac that are mental or intellectual, but no sign has a stronger mode of thought than Gemini. Now that comes with a lot of challenges, I think, for people that have major Gemini, especially early Geminis. I once worked with a woman that was May 27th. Remember, she was May 27th, and I worked in a small group kind of close to her. There was like 3 or 4 of us our desks were close, and we would have to collaborate on certain things. And she had great ideas, but she was a tad abrasive. She was a tad abrasive, and she didn't like things very heavy. She didn't like things very serious. So she wanted to just have her idea and go along with it. And she didn't like to fine tune things. So there's an essence of freedom here. So this is so important. It's so important to the early Gemini person, is this freedom of thought, right? I mean, freedom is important to every sign and all of us. But early Gemini energy, or if you have those degrees for a moon, a Mars, or a rising, especially, so important that you have space to be both people, be both twins. Contrary to popular belief, Geminis can and do have a serious side to them. Geminis are not always just silly or flaky, but they will often, I think Geminis can set up situations for themselves so that they have like an escape hatch, a built-in escape hatch. That's also very much for all the mutable signs, for the 4 mutable signs. Like I talked about last week briefly, it's very, very important that the mutable signs have space because of their restlessness. All 4 mutable signs are restless in different ways. But Gemini's freedom, it causes the sudden events. And this is what I'm talking about. Let me peek around the corner and see what's there. Because that sparks something else in the Gemini. That's how Gemini differs from all the other signs. No other sign operates like that, if you think about it. And if you watch people with Gemini, and I mean really watch. Now, since I don't have Gemini in my chart, or someone else doesn't, I guarantee you that a lot of the strongly Geminian people I've known have found me eventually boring. And I'm totally fine with that. That doesn't offend me in the least. Not at all. I don't take that personally at all. It's just energetic. It's energetically. It's like energetically you vibrate with certain people, in person, or you don't. And sometimes you vibrate with people for a time. It's like a limited time. It's like a limited time offer, right? For a coupon that you're going to use at your favorite clothing store online or something. It's a limited time offer. It expires next Friday. So when you really start to understand the essence of Gemini, and I have no Gemini, so that's why I can see it so clearly. Does that make sense? So when you have a strong lack in your chart, or a strong placement, then you can either see that in others, or maybe struggle to see those differences. But that freedom causes sudden events, and it can cause wounds or chaos. Now that goes to the fixed stars, which kind of translates to wounds or poison. I think it's more so verbally. Gemini can be verbal poison. When Geminis are unhinged and negative or insecure, remember how I said an insecure, angry Taurus, look out, because that Taurus is going to, you need to give them space in their pasture to calm down, and you're not going to be able to really level with them or be rational with them. So Gemini is a different thing. We're not dealing with an animal, right? So Gemini is not an animal, it's the twins. But Gemini's mind is so sharp and so mercurial that if a Gemini gets unhinged and is upset and is unstable, then they can cause, it can be chaos. And it might just be chaos in their mind. You'll never know it, but it's chaos for the person that has the strong Mercury in their chart. And if that person has ADD or ADHD or anything neurodivergent that's a challenge, that's going to be double challenge, sort of thing. And, you know, it's interesting because I remember when I was in middle school, I knew 1, 2, 3, I don't know how I remember this, but I remember when I was in middle school, maybe 8th grade, I knew 4 Geminis. I knew 2 Gemini boys and 2 Gemini girls. And I had a strong dynamic with them at that age. They seemed to really like me, and I liked them, like in a platonic, friendly, innocent kind of way. And and then, like I said, I've always had these dynamics with Gemini. So a lot of that is where Gemini is in your chart. But this energy, if a Gemini is going to cause wounds or chaos, you know, if you ask the Gemini person, they may have a rationale for that can make you see, well, it's not chaos to me because I just need a lot in my life. And that's true. There's nothing wrong with that. I need less in my life than someone that's strongly Gemini. And that's fine. That's why someone that's strongly Gemini might find me eventually boring, or find someone else doesn't have a lot of air or a lot of Gemini or Libra or Aquarius or something else there for stimulation. So the Gemini person just needs a lot, especially this early Gemini energy with the Mercury. They just need a lot to put their mind into for work, hobby, whether it's reading, whether it's even doing something like this, like YouTube and talking, presenting, messaging. That's all Gemini. And like I said, the Gemini need to peek around the corner. You know, it's a mental need. It's not necessarily emotional or physical, or philosophical or psychological. It's just kind of like, I thought I was going to do this on vacation this weekend, but you know what? Maybe I'm going to do that. Or maybe I'm just going to hop on the subway and go a few stops to a different neighborhood in the city and just see what pops up, because I like the people, or I like the vibration. So that's kind of where Gemini goes. That's why some people see Gemini as unreliable. So is that unreliable? I don't know. It depends. Because like any sign, if you understand the essence of any sign and can give without giving up your needs, you need to get your needs too. But if you can give that sign, a little leverage or a little space for them to be, and they get that, then they're not going to feel as threatened. So think about that. Every sign that has an escape hatch or, a delusional trait, let's say, every sign has a trait that they believe that they're like, but it's a little delusional. Geminis often feel misunderstood because they have their own language. Does that make sense? If you're a Gemini or you're a major Gemini person in your chart, you will have your own language, whether that's with your body, the way you use your hands, something about the way you present yourself or the way you write or speak or sing. Something will be very unique with that. Gemini rules the hands, the arms, and the nervous system. So Geminis are nerves. Geminis are nerves. So that means a Gemini can have nerve. If you said to someone, oh my God, did you hear what that person said? That person has nerve. Think about that. That's how Gemini can wound. Or you could say, boy, that person is nervous. My gosh, that person can't sit still and they're flitting from one thing to another. Oh, there's the Gemini. So the tarot trump card is the Juggler, which is harmony or chaos. And again, that's wound or chaos, harmony. So, Gemini is and can be anything. And Gemini is somewhat of the magician of the zodiac. And if you look at the mythology, right, of Mercury and all those stories and the myths, you'll see that Gemini can help themselves by helping others, and then they can help others by helping themselves. But there's a lot of lessons there for early Gemini. And early Gemini people, and I've known the people I worked with, haven't been the most patient. I've noticed Gemini people that I've worked with, not the most patient, and can go from kind of charming and rational to kind of unhinged of something that they see that threatens their freedom, or they don't like restrictions. So if you're major Gemini and you're asked to do something, it may be reasonable to some other people, but maybe to the early Gemini person, it might seem more like a restriction. And that can cause a temper and a little bit of a quiet, brooding nature, which Geminis don't really show that. One Gemini person who is not this decan, but I will talk about him later, is Prince, the artist formerly known as, and I mention him every year. And I will talk more about Prince. But Prince was a Gemini person that in interviews was both brash and acerbic, kind of sharp, but also very quiet and introverted. So he had these twins to him. He had these different sides he had this kind of, you could see he was kind of angry a lot of the time, but he was also sensitive and brooding at the same time. And that's what helped him create such prolific, at times brilliant music. And that can cause trouble. That's also the stars, the fixed stars. I don't mean the stars like Hollywood stars. I mean the fixed stars in the constellation of Taurus. Marilyn Monroe, Jeffrey Dahmer, O.J. Simpson, John Wayne Gacy. We're talking about dark, brooding energy with Gemini. So the sparkle of Gemini can often hide a very dark mindset. And these people will obviously either acted upon or attracted very tragic circumstances in their lives based on some of the stars. OJ had the Mars. I believe Jeffrey had the Moon. Marilyn with the Sun. John Wayne Gacy, I know we talked about him before. I think he might have been the Moon or Mars. But that trouble, if there is an involvement in the person, they're not mature or stable, and they're not around stable people. Again, Gemini is very influenced by, if a Gemini person's a little wild and they're constantly around wild people, that's not a good combination. Maybe for one night it is, but it's not in the long term. That's probably not going to end well. So yeah, all those people with the stars, and they're into the local scene. So that's what I mean when I'm peeking around the corner. So the scene. I had a Gemini friend in college. We would go out to a bar or a club or something, and he would say, "Let's check out the scene." And he was a Moon in Gemini. And I had at that same very time, I had another male friend that was a Gemini Moon. I don't know if he used that exact phrase, but he had the same kind of emotional relationship to his environment, where he was kind of versatile and changing himself in a way to fit his environment and to figure out where he wants to be. Do I want to be at this type of place? Do I want to be at a quiet place? Do I want to be at a loud place? Kind of thing. And it's interesting, really interesting to watch people with Gemini, because that local scene is equal to the opposite is far away, which is Sag. So the opposite is Sag 1 in 6 months. Sag is looking far away for far away travel, and Gemini is kind of looking and zooming in to see what the local scene's doing. But Geminis would be keen to increase their intuition, because increasing your intuition, not that that's always reliable, but getting grounded and increasing your intuition as a Gemini can really help to even out some of this mental chaos. You know, we all overthink in life, right? We all overanalyze, overworry, overthink to some extent. But depending on our chart placements, depending on how we were brought up, depending on whether we have ADD or ADHD or anything like that, depending on if we're incredibly sensitive to drugs or caffeine or alcohol, all those things affect our mental processes. But with Geminis, from what I could see, people with strong Gemini are so sharp and clever and intelligent, but they often ignore their intuition, where their intuition is right, but they don't trust it, because they think, well, I'm so smart and clever. What do I need? What do I need that intuition for? I already have this situation figured out. Where they may not. And it's interesting because I feel like Gemini people, in a sense, they're not very receptive to hearing someone else have the solution or the right answer to something. It's not that they have to be right, but again, Gemini prides themselves on being clever and sharp and a step ahead. So I think that can bother Gemini sometimes, or bother a strongly Gemini chart, when you figured out something before them that they feel they should have already figured out. And what they're really mad is that of themselves, at their own mind. So they're starting to swirl with that. So balancing out that thought, that crazy thoughtfulness, fast thoughts, with more intuition. That is the key, I think, to helping early Gemini energy. And also, let's keep in mind, so Gemini 1's born next week. It's just coming off the Taurus Gemini cusp. So even though there aren't Taurus traits like there were last week, or this week, it's still closer to Taurus than it is to Cancer, to the next sign. And it's the very first, the degrees are less than 10. So it's still a early part, but there isn't the Venus. Here we don't have a strongly Venus influence most of the time in these Gemini people. So if you were a Gemini person born between May 25th and June 2nd, I would look at your Mercury the most, your house placement, your aspects. And I would also look, to some extent, because of the stars, I would look to Mars and Saturn. But it's interesting because the Sun in Gemini person is really the only person that's a true Gemini. If you're a Gemini rising, you appear like a Gemini to people, and you can even act and play like a Gemini, like a mask, and you can seem so Gemini, but your identity is not that of a Gemini. So that's why you can be different. And that also goes for Moon and Gemini people, who can have Gemini habits and Gemini traits for the Moon, but that doesn't mean that their ego or their life force is that of a Gemini. It's just used a little differently. And when you get to know the placements and you know enough people, you start to see kind of how people use. That's why it's so important, when you know a sign in certain placements, it can be more enhanced, less enhanced, stronger, weaker, kind of thing. But high speed is Gemini. These folks are high speed. I've never known anyone that was strongly Gemini, especially Sun, Moon, or Rising, that didn't do things quickly. It doesn't mean they're always like running or walking quickly, but there's something, like brevity. It's like short, curt bursts of, I want to do this. I got to figure this out. Oh, wait, let me figure that out, kind of thing. And it's just the kind of thing of, it's so important for Gemini. This is what it said at the beginning, and I don't know anyone that came in late, is quiet. That's the biggest lesson for Gemini, in a nutshell, is to respect quiet. Now, that's not easy for any of us in this world where we're all bombarded constantly with distractions, and myself included. I was scrolling this morning on my phone. I was looking up some astrology stuff, and I found my mind going into this loop. And before you know it, it was 15 minutes. It felt like 1 or 2 minutes to me. But it was 15 minutes of me just doing this astrology stuff and hearing these little bites. And just that 15 minutes felt like, whoa, okay, I got to get out of this. I'm getting lost in this already, sort of thing. So that distractibility is always there. But if Gemini can learn to be okay with quiet at times, and that is, that's a big indicator. That would be I feel like if I did compatibility with anybody with major Gemini in their chart, and they asked me if their husband or wife or their dating partner was compatible with them, I feel like that might be my easiest read, would be the strongly Gemini person, and then look at the other chart. Because if the other person, the strongly Gemini person, did not respect the Gemini's need to flit, that doesn't mean you're flaky. It just means the Gemini planet needs a little more juice, needs a little more thrill, needs little more something. Joie de vivre, something, right? It's just a little something. It's hard to put in words. But if you have a Gemini planet, you'll know what I mean. It's just a little something that you need, that maybe the person over here or me that doesn't have that strong Gemini we don't need it. And we're okay with a little more quiet, or we're okay with something a little slower, or we're okay with something a little less thrilling mentally. But that doesn't mean that's a negative thing on you for high speed. So the key is to intervene with yourself. And I mentioned this last week for Taurus Gemini. It's very good to monitor your activities, your level of, especially if it becomes hyperactive. Just like they used to term kids hyperactive before the ADHD or whatever. So intervene and decide, as a Gemini, you have this strong energy to jump in your environment. Is that to protect people, because you do like to do that? Or is it to manipulate? Because it's easy for you to manipulate your environment. And so if you're an EMT and you're at the scene, you're the first responder at a scene where someone's injured, that's wonderful. You're lightning fast. The Gemini person is going to be lightning fast, responsive. They're not going to be emotional. They're going to get right to it. Boom, 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 boom. Help the person get the questions, get the information, and then right to the hospital. That's wonderful. Protect, and maybe even manipulate that environment to help the person. So the sign of Gemini is really, really, and if you look at the serial killers that have major Gemini that were able to charm people, they were able to blend in their environments. How scary is that? Blend in communities and charm people and act like the guy or the girl next door, and obviously, and be able to trick and fool people. And that's the manipulation. So Gemini can do that. Gemini can do that actually quite easily. And I've seen people that I've known, people with Gemini, manipulate, but it's not taking on that more heavy connotation of, oh, you're manipulative. It's more so of like, how can I manipulate the situation so I can have fun and make it a little less stuffy, right? After coming off of the heavy Taurus, which is all about commitment and all about heaviness. Gemini's like, some things are just too darn stuffy. Whether that's a person, an attitude, you know, a vibration. So that's a you know, it's something we need in the zodiac. We need Geminis. You know, we need Geminis to infuse a breath of fresh air. Um, you know, even if we don't like it, it's good. It's a good thing. You know, life is very serious right now. You know, all these things happening with all the travel and all this identification monitoring and data monitoring, and of course the wars and all this manipulation with politics. And you know, we are living in a very intense, serious, heavy world. And no matter what our charts are, we all have to find ways, positive ways, for release and to lighten things up. And certainly early Gemini people can help with that. So there's a lot of good. Again, protect or manipulate. Protect or manipulate. It's your choice, Gemini. You can choose to do either. And but finish starts. That's the biggest lesson. It's kind of like Aries. All the thrust of Aries as a person, then the implementation of ideas as a Taurus. Now Gemini's taking the Taurus and saying, hey, you sat on that too long. You were way too cautious. We need to grow this in 3 months because we need to keep up with the current trends. So we got to move. That's Gemini. But Gemini has to finish starts, whether that's a relationship, whether that's dating someone. Like, try to finish something before you end it or move on to the next job, hobby, or person kind of thing. You know, and be honest. If you aren't going to finish that start, you know, good to be a little honest. But patience, patience, really important for Gemini to learn, especially early Gemini, the Mercury. You know, Aries and Gemini are two signs that really stand out to me as an astrologer that are here for lessons in patience, or Aries and Taurus planets for different types of reasons. But that mind, that quickness of Gemini, that again, no other sign has that swiftness that Gemini has, which can be a wonderful thing, but can also, you know, it can cut a little sharp. So try that patience. And again, that's the opposite of Sag 1, which is fire and more intuition kind of thing. All right, so the transits, we have the Sun trining Pluto tomorrow. That's wonderful. Now, that's only right now. That's only this weekend because Pluto's retrograde early and the Sun is in early Gemini. So early Aquarius people getting the conjunction. Gemini people are getting the trine, but only early Gemini. You have to be 0, 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4. So for those Geminis that are born next week, that are born like June 3rd on, Pluto is not there. It's only trining by sign. You're not getting the degree. And that also goes for early Libra. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 early Libra planets are getting that beautiful trine from Pluto. So that should help energy, health. But hopefully for Gemini people, it's helping your life force and your health, because it's a really, really good time to tap into that. If you can slow down a little bit and do some meditation and focus on that, whether it's focus on the energy in your hands and your arms and get your nervous system regulated, which can be hard for Gemini, that would probably do a lot of benefits for both your physical and mental health. Now, obviously, if you're a younger Gemini compared to an older Gemini, you know, you're at different points in your life. You've gone through a lot more if you're older, and you've probably already, you know, you've already ironed out a lot of your lessons and gone beyond your natal chart, so to speak. So it really depends on where you are in life. We have a huge trine here. The Sun, midheaven, Pluto, and Uranus. Amazing. Very, very strong here. And let me bring up tonight's chart here. All right, May 23rd. All right, I'm going to share this chart. All right. View chart. All right. Is that tonight? Yeah. Okay. This was, oh, I did it 4:20. Okay, so I did it before. So this is a few hours ago, but it's basically the same. So we have that. So here's all this Gemini. So here we have the Uranus in Taurus still. We have that algol that I was talking about, but we're moving forward. We're moving forward. It's direct. It's 27 now. It's moving closer to Gemini. And then we have Mercury in Taurus, which will be in Gemini very soon. So all this Earth energy is really moving away. Here's the Pluto in Aquarius, and here's Libra. Actually, I have Libra rising here. Let's see. But the Sun here and Uranus, I mean, this is a really, really close conjunction with the Taurus algol and the early Gemini, which is at 2 degrees, which is obviously very early cusp energy. So this is a really explosive kind of mix of energy here with Sun and Uranus. So if a baby was born tonight, he or she would have this Sun conjunct Uranus, and it would be like this explosive reserved Taurus energy, and then this fast, raw Gemini energy that has to start, has to have all these starts, and doesn't have the caution. So that's a lot. And then I would look to Mercury, and Mercury's in Taurus, so that would actually help the baby. That he or she would have Mercury in Taurus, late Taurus, which is a little more grounded kind of thing. But look at this. We have the Neptune in Aries, we have Venus in Aries, and of course tonight the moon's in Aries. The moon and Venus are conjunct tonight in Aries, and we have the Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn is going into Aries. When is it? Tomorrow night Eastern time, we're going Saturn into Aries. So now we're going to have all this fire here, and then the node is in Pisces. So we're really, really moving away from the earth and water, the yin, and getting much more yang energy with the air here and the Gemini, and all this fire here with Aries. There's no Sag, not really. And of course that Mars and Leo, that is direct. So really, really interesting. And this Jupiter Gemini is only affecting late Gemini people. So again, this isn't even involved in the Sun Pluto thing either. This Pluto retrograde at 3. See, so tomorrow is going to be an exact Sun Pluto conjunction. So if we had a Libra planet, that would be beautiful. That would be sweet. Oh, I know Libra people would be loving that. If we had a Libra cosmic planetary transit, which we don't, we just have Libra moving on the houses, the Libra person would feel that trine, even though Pluto's retrograde, it's like a comfy little air trine, which can be, it can be comfortable or it can be lazy. The trines are, you have to use it. You have to engage, have to push yourself to use it, because things come easily with the trines and there's gifts. But it can also mean lazy if you don't use it, engage and act on it. But so when we get into Libra in the fall, in late September, when we talk about Libra, we'll see, obviously, we're not going to have a lot of Gemini, but we will have that. Pluto in Aquarius isn't going to move much this year with the retrograde. Now it's going to hardly move at all by December, and we will have some of this. And then obviously the Sun in Libra will trine this Pluto in the fall, so that will be really nice for Libra people and Libra planets. But again, only early Libra. Again, this Pluto in Aquarius that you hear every astrologer in the world 1,001 astrologers right now doing videos on it, and podcasts and live streams. It's going to take forever. So again, even a baby or a small child, that's under 10, they're going to go decades. And this Pluto is going to move super, super slow. So depending on where it is in your chart and what it's hitting, there are lessons that may be for a year, 2, 3 years prominently, or decades, literally 10, 15, 20-year, kind of lessons. So, but the beauty of astrology is whenever you get a direct hit from a transit, most astrologers call it a hit. And that means when it comes across and it touches or kisses your planet for the first time, that's the most, let's call it moist. It's the most saturated. It's like a deluge of rain. That's when it really rains on the planet and it really hits. Then it moves away and it might come back retrograde, right, and hit again. That's not going to be as strong because you've already psychologically started the process, hopefully, of your lessons. All right, so we have 3 people in here. That's good. We're an hour in. So next, I want to bring up the new moon chart. Let's see here. Here we go. So this is the new moon for Memorial Day, and happy Memorial Day to everyone coming up. And thank you to any and all guys and gals in the service that have helped and fought for us. Whether you believe in the service or not, or believe in war or not, we have to respect those that have lost their lives and have been harmed. And I was talking with, a week ago, I was talking with a disabled Marine veteran who saw active duty in the 80s and early 90s, active time in the Marines. So he saw a lot, and he has a lot of stories. He's in his late 60s, and he is a very troubled man, but he's also has some amazing insight and insights into life and people because of what he's been through and what he saw. And it just, when I was talking with him a couple weeks ago, it just gave me a different perspective and appreciation and gratefulness for those of us that don't have to go through that. And he talks about his PTSD that he has, and things from his family, and just a lot of baggage and a lot of issues. And the poor man never married, he has no children, sort of thing. So it was really interesting to speak with him. And he's a moon child, he's a Cancer, so he's a very, very sensitive man in some ways. But this new moon, this is Monday, 11 p.m. Here we have the sun and moon at 6 of Gemini. So what's very prominent about this is that this is Gemini 1. This isn't the cusp anymore. This is true Gemini energy. So this is going to be very powerful for Gemini planets that are early. And look, here's Mercury going into Gemini. So we're you see, so we are only going to have this Uranus Taurus next week. No major Capricorn, and Virgo's even hiding here. No Virgo. So things are going to feel a lot lighter, I think, especially for Gemini people and Gemini planets. And even if you have a Gemini planet or rising that's not around 6 degrees, you're still going to feel, you should still feel the, you'll feel a loose conjunction, and you'll feel that energy. And Jupiter is still in Gemini. So look at all that Gemini next week. Holy cow. Wow. And that's also going to activate Sagittarius planets. So any of you that have early Sagittarius planets or rising or midheaven that's around that degree, that's going to activate it. It's the opposite sign. And to some degree, the square signs, which are Pisces and Virgo, early degrees around 4, 5, 6, 7 as well. But all this fire, all this Gemini, and what we're seeing here next week is a profound lack of water. Scorpio, nothing. We're out of Mars and Cancer, nothing. Pisces intercepted, we have the node. Saturn has now moved into Aries as of next week. Now Saturn will come back. It's always going to do, we always have these planets doing the retrograde cusp thing, and it's always going to come back to that other sign and kiss someone's planet again, finish up a little lesson, finish up a class, and then, move on again. But profound lack of water. So that's going to be interesting to see how that feels for people next week. Does that feel like there's a lack of empathy or compassion in the air? Or is there more clarity to kind of move forward and kind of be active and get things done? Gemini is a fun time. So we should use that energy of Gemini to connect and network. It's more kind of unemotional networking. It's connecting with people, and it's caring for people, but it's obviously it's air. So it's in a more impersonal or unemotional sort of way. Doesn't necessarily mean it's uncaring. It just means it's maybe a little more distant or unemotional, especially with the moon in Gemini kind of thing. So that's something that we have coming next week. And I'll remove that. Okay, so I'm back. All right. So we're getting late here. I see there's 2 or 3 people coming in and out, so possibly new viewers. So that's good. And don't forget, if you're new to the channel, great take on Gemini. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're very welcome. Yeah, I meditated a little bit and watched the reels and tried to absorb what other people were saying about astrology. Instead of just copying them, I was trying to get my own essence. And I feel like I did. I feel like this time tonight, I feel like a fresh perspective of Gemini. So let's look at celebrities. Again, this is all pure Gemini people. It's kind of the pure brilliance or madness, if you will, of Gemini. Miles Davis. What can you say about Miles Davis? Troubled. Absolutely brilliant. Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac. Troubled. Tons of relationships. Brilliant. Ramsey Lewis, one of the best jazz pianists in the world. I don't know if his life was troubled, but brilliant and effortless versatility in jazz music. John Bonham is one of the best physical drummers of all time from Led Zeppelin. Danny Elfman is one of the best pop and soundtrack composers of all time. He was with a group called Oingo Boingo, and he did many TV themes and soundtrack themes, and he has quite a body of work, solo work as well. Larry Blackmon is the lead singer of a funk group called Cameo, and I've seen Cameo in concert a couple times, and he is just amazing. Even as an older man, the energy he has, and he's so interesting and sharp. The way he sings, he is not the least bit boring. Alan Wilder is from the early part of the English group Depeche Mode. Very, very brilliant with songwriting and keyboard. Again, with the fingers. What Geminis can do with fingers is just unbelievable. That's pure Mercury. Jesse Johnson is one of the most underrated guitarists ever. He is a protege of Prince. So Jesse Johnson's guitar style is from Minneapolis, and he worked for Prince as a session musician and was in a group called The Time, who was produced by Prince. So Prince had control over all these guys. But Jesse's solo work is amazing. And Jesse's also had a very drug-addicted, troubled life, where he's been quite unhinged and gotten in trouble, I think, with the law and things. So poor Jesse. But he's amazing. Got to listen to his music. He's as good as Prince. He really is, if not better. But no one talks about that. Tim Rice Oxley is a very gifted keyboard player for the British group Keane. Keane is someone like Coldplay. Everyone's heard of Coldplay, but a lot of people have not heard of Keane. Keane is almost as big as Coldplay, but he is an amazing keyboard player and songwriter. Ethereal, beautiful, poignant. You know, when Geminis put their brand of brilliance into music, it's unlike any other sign. And it's very hard to describe, but if you're someone that has a good ear for music, you can hear it. Andy Griffith, the classic actor. I threw him on here because, you know, he was, what was that show? He was with Ron Howard. He was born in the 20s. Obviously, Ron Howard was much younger. But Andy Griffith, with his, just the way he speaks and the smile and the sparkle in his eye, I felt like he was a very true kind of Gemini person on TV to mention here. And of course, Marilyn Monroe. I saved her for last. And what can we say about Marilyn Monroe? I mean, her life. Karen says, so interesting. Thanks. You are welcome. Greetings, Scorpio. We've done Align with Aries. Welcome. No, I didn't talk. I haven't talked about. We've been talking about Gemini all evening, and then I was just talking about the transits a little bit. If you ladies don't mind, I would love to look at Marilyn Monroe's chart with you for a little bit here. Let's see. All right, here we go. All right, so here's Marilyn Monroe's chart. I might actually do a live stream where we just take a couple charts, because there was a lot about this I wanted to talk about, but since it's late, we're looking at 9:45. I'll only mention, maybe take 5 or 10 minutes on this if you're all interested. I appreciate you hanging in there. I really appreciate that. So Marilyn Monroe, I mean, had obviously her Hollywood life, her short-lived Hollywood actress life, and her relationships were widely publicized. And so why is that? Well, let's look. You can look at Marilyn Monroe from the actress perspective. You can look at her from whatever age she was when she was acting, or when she was involved with certain men, in the 40s, 50s, and then of certain times in her life, whether she was going through a Saturn cycle or something. And then we can look at her chart. So astrologers would approach, depending on the astrologer, every astrologer approaches a chart from their own unique kind of perspective and training, right? Although we all look at kind of the same things, we're kind of going through different doors. And there's really no right or wrong way doors. There's a lot of astrologers that say you have to learn my system. That's how you'll become brilliant. And there are many astrologers that are brilliant because they've created these systems. Personally, I think that's a little too anal retentive for my taste. I have systems and logic that I use, but when you get to almost a Virgoan level of detail with a system, you miss out on other methods and modes of getting the information. And people that are psychics or mediums or tarot people will know what I mean by that. You can't always use your head. Always use your head. So as an astrologer, if this was your chart and you were paying for a reading with me, it would depend on if you asked me a question or not, or if you had a focus. I would say, do you have a focus? Family, love, career, hobbies, pets, whatever. Do you see dead people, like The Sixth Sense? No, just a joke. But I would immediately, what zooms into here for me is not what most people would look at. I can tell you that most astrologers will say, oh, Marilyn was so feminine and vivacious and she had these troubles, and look at that Leo rising. Whoa, that kind of says, look at me, look at me, look at me. And yes, Glamorous Neptune in the first house in Leo and Leo rising. Holy cow. There was no way that Marilyn was not going to get noticed no matter where she went. She could have been an average looking person, even a below average looking person, classically handsome or pretty person, less than average attractiveness, let's say. And she would have gotten noticed with just pure presence. Now, but this is what really stands out to me, and I wrote this down, is here we have Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn's in a late degree of Scorpio. It's in the third decan, and it's retrograde. So, of course, all people born that year, it's generational. So 1926 people would be Saturn and Scorpio people. That would indicate a certain passion and intensity having to do with lessons or career and work, transformation through work. But it's retrograde. So her energy with Saturn here, very secretive. Now, does this look secretive? No, this is all, look at me. Is her wild sun and Mercury in Gemini that's, driving in sixth gear? No. In the 10th house, this is public. Look at me. Look at me. Look how fast I am. Look how bubbly I am. I am wild. I am free. I am fast. Wow. Life is just woohoo. But this is Saturn here in the fourth house. So this is what really comes to me. Saturn, Mars in Pisces, not retrograde, and the node in Cancer. So I think this is what some people would miss. You have this grand water trine, Saturn, Scorpio, Pisces, Cancer. All water signs, very close here, 18, 20, and 21. So these are very, very close. And that to me is kind of the hidden, Marilyn's hidden gift that she had, and also her hidden troubles. Now, I would need a lot of time to go into more detail with that. But just generally speaking, now these are outer planets. This is the node, which is her destiny from past life. This is Saturn, which is an outer planet, but it relates to her career to some extent. But Mars is her energy. And I know, I know some people, I won't mention you because for your privacy, but I know those of you who have Mars and Pisces. I love Mars and Pisces people. I really like Mars and Pisces people because there's no other, I don't know how to say it. There's no other sign for Mars that is like, knows how to practice non-resistance. Does that make sense? Is that a phrase? Non-resistance. So much of life, people fight, people resist, people are stubborn, people are holding on to their opinions, holding on to their pride. People are competing with people are manipulating people. Like so much of that goes on in our lives, right? At work and like in relationships. And Mars and Pisces can absolutely have a dark side and can have its negative qualities. But generally speaking, Mars and Pisces is like, whoa, I'm just going to flow with this. You know what? I'm just going to swim. I'm going to bob. I'm going to bob and weave, and I'm going to ebb and flow. And that's the Mars and Pisces strength. And Marilyn obviously had that. And why that's Mars is so important is because it's tied into this trine. It's not just Mars and Pisces by itself doing its own thing and swimming in its own sea. It's tied to Saturn and it's tied to the nodes, which is past life, which is Cancer, which is also retrograde. So that is so different than her mercurial, mindful, all of these kind of quick thoughts and fun. So different than this Leo rising, which she was playing a person of like, look at me, I'm the center of attention, but that's not really who she was, right? So behind the scenes in her personal life, She was not like a Leo. That's the trick. She was not like a Leo, and she wasn't even like a Gemini. Her Saturn's in the 4th, so her water trine was all behind the scenes kind of thing. So I'll leave that at that because it's getting late, but I appreciate you ladies that hung in there with me. I know this is a late evening. I'm getting tired here, but this is so fascinating to me. And there's a couple of other astrologers that have way more subscribers than I do. They're really, really great people. And they, I've heard both of them do delineations on Marilyn Monroe. Not for a while. It was a year or two ago. But, you know, this chart is fascinating. And of course, this is tropical astrology. You know, a Vedic astrologer would look at this and say, oh, no, this is all wrong. You know, they'd probably say, oh, no, we got to go back in the degrees. She was Taurus. She was a Taurus. So that's okay. This is Western astrology. So this is my system. But I've seen a lot of blogs on this and talked about Marilyn in posts, and this chart really seems to fit some of her life and, you know, the actions. But maybe we'll go into that a little deeper. But I really appreciate so much hanging in there. We've had some glitches here. I'm still getting to know this software, and a little tricky there. I had a little trick. I'm not sure with the YouTube. My YouTube page was a little messy there. So I appreciate it. And you're welcome, all the Geminis, sharing your birthday, May 25th to June 2nd next week. Happy birthday to all those Gemini people and the Mercury. And then next week, we'll be talking about Gemini 2, which starts right around June 3rd or 4th. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And again, have a wonderful Memorial Day. And I hope everybody got to, at least last week, I got to wish some mom in your life, younger or older, or if you are, if you got the respect of Happy Mother's Day. But happy belated Mother's Day to all the moms and grandmas out there and great grandmas. Thank you for all you do. Yeah, so have a great week. Happy Memorial Day again. And just remember on Memorial Day, just appreciate, if we all have peace, if we're living in peace on Monday and we don't feel unsafe, that's a gift. That's a gift, and I think we really need to appreciate that. All right, thank you so much. See you next week, most likely at the usual time, Friday night at 8 p.m. But you could check my socials, and I will keep up with the posts there. Thanks so much. Have a great week.